Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, right now, we are literally witnessing a massive collision. The hyper-advanced AI leaps of June 2026 are just crashing headfirst into this chaotic, totally fragmented regulatory wall. Industry insiders are calling it a systemic realignment, and honestly, it's happening right before our eyes, completely reshaping the entire global tech sector.
So, this brings us to the absolute crucial question today. What actually happens when AI starts acting entirely on its own? We've totally moved past the era of typing a prompt into a browser and just waiting for some distant cloud server to text us back. AI is evolving from simple chatbots into autonomous systems operating right there on our physical devices. They can make multi-step decisions now, but as this capability absolutely explodes, the rules trying to govern it are just fracturing.
To help navigate all this chaos, here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit the 2026 systemic realignment, agents and edge computing, the federal voluntary framework, the state regulatory patchwork, model bans and open source, and finally, navigating a fragmented future. Let's jump right in. Section 1, the 2026 systemic realignment, the unstoppable force. Listen, we are no longer just talking about abstract code living in the ether. This is physical and enterprise integration happening all at once. Out in the physical world, Boston Dynamics' Atlas humanoid robot is demonstrating some truly mind-bending agility, doing things machines literally couldn't pull off a year ago. Over in the corporate world, heavyweights like NVIDIA and ServiceNow just launched Project Arc. They're deploying self-evolving AI agents directly onto knowledge workers' desktops to handle incredibly complex tasks. Oh, and out on the streets, Pony AI and Uber officially rolled out Europe's very first commercial robo-taxi service over in Zagreb, Croatia. AI is actively navigating our physical world and autonomously running our daily workflows. It's wild. And fueling this huge transition is a staggering mobilization of capital. To put it in perspective, IBM alone just committed more than $10 billion, yeah, $10 billion with a B, just to push quantum computing toward fault-tolerant systems by 2026. This isn't just some minor hardware upgrade. We're talking about a complete ground-up redesign of how we process information, building the exact raw computational muscle needed to handle the massive amounts of data these new autonomous systems chew through. Moving on to Section 2, agents and edge computing, the new architecture. See, we are rapidly moving out of the cloud and straight into the era of agentic software. Basically, this means AI is no longer just a distant service hosted in some massive freezing cold data center. It's becoming a highly local, highly autonomous engine running directly on the edge. And by the edge, I mean your smartphone, your enterprise desktop, or the actual computer physically sitting inside a robo-taxi. These multi-step programs are making complex decisions locally. That drastically increases their speed and capability for sure, but man, doing so opens up entirely new vulnerabilities and regulatory nightmares. That brings us to Section 3, the federal voluntary framework, a hands-off approach.
So, how is the U.S. government reacting? Well, President Trump's AI cybersecurity executive order, signed on June 2nd, 2026, represents a massive policy pivot. It heavily prioritizes voluntary industry collaboration and cyber defense over mandatory government pre-screening or licensing. Actually, they've explicitly prohibited mandatory licensing. Instead, they've set up these voluntary 30-day pre-release reviews, and interestingly enough, it places an intelligence agency, the NSA, in charge of administering classified benchmarking for what they're calling covered frontier models. Just to clarify, frontier models are basically the absolute most massive, cutting-edge AI systems in development right now. As for enforcement, the focus is strictly on criminal behavior. The Department of Justice is prioritizing prosecuting bad actors who use autonomous AI agents to unlawfully access external systems or commit cybercrimes. But right here is where the tension really builds. If we look at the federal government's voluntary, national security-focused approach and compare it to what's happening at the state level, wow, we see a stark, incredibly fragmented contrast. Which leads perfectly into Section 4, the state regulatory patchwork, the fragmented shield. Seriously, put yourself in a developer's shoes and look at the gauntlet you now have to run. At the federal level, you've got voluntary reviews. Okay, pretty straightforward. But cross the border into Colorado and their revised automated decision-making law suddenly mandates pre-use consumer notices and 30-day explanations for adverse outcomes if your AI impacts things like housing or jobs. Shift over to California, and developers of massive models have to publish training data summaries and apply content watermarks. Then look at Texas. They've outright banned specific AI uses like biometric tracking and social scoring within state agencies. It is a completely uncoordinated, highly prescriptive regulatory maze.
And the stakes for getting this wrong are no joke. In California alone, civil penalties can reach up to $1 million per violation for large enterprises that fail to implement required risk frameworks or incident reporting. $1 million bucks? The financial risk of non-compliance is suddenly very, very real. And for a lot of startups, it's straight up existential. Plus, it's not just the contradictory rules causing chaos, it's trying to figure out when they actually apply. The legal sand is literally shifting beneath developers' feet. For instance, tech companies thought they had until June 2026 to comply with the comprehensive Colorado AI Act. But after massive industry pushback, the state repealed and replaced it, delaying the narrower new law to January 2027. Keeping track of this compliance calendar across 50 different states, it's essentially become a full-time job.
Let's look at Section 5, Model Bans and Open Source, the breaking point.
So, what exactly happens when these super strict rules clash directly with frontier innovation? Well, we're already seeing the fallout. The US government recently forced the withdrawal of Anthropic's two newest models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, citing national security concerns over alleged guardrail bypasses. But on the flip side, cybersecurity researchers are calling this ban downright dangerous, pointing out that similar flaws exist in other approved models anyway. This has sparked a fiercely public debate. Is this about genuine security, or is it just political maneuvering in a really tense environment? In response to these kinds of sweeping federal actions and those fragmented state laws we talked about, industry voices are publishing some pretty stark warnings. Listen to this quote from an op-ed by Nathan Lambert and Kevin Shu. Banning or restricting open-source AI would severely harm education, innovation, and market competition. They strongly argue that aggressively restricting or banning open-source AI models will crush the very innovation that drives our economy. And they point out that open source is actually vital for maintaining national security and acting as a counterbalance to massive corporate monopolies. Which brings us to our final section, navigating a fragmented future. The biggest takeaway from our explainer today is really defined by this incredible tension. Building autonomous, agentic technology, the stuff powering those agile robots, self-driving cars, and enterprise desktop agents, now requires navigating a deeply fractured legal reality. Developers are caught right in the middle, totally wedged between federal deregulatory ambitions that lean heavily on voluntary sharing and aggressive state lawmakers imposing strict, enforceable mandates that completely change depending on which state line your code crosses. As edge computing puts more and more powerful autonomous AI directly into our physical environments, this collision between borderless technology and bordered legislation is only going to accelerate. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to consider as you watch this systemic realignment unfold. In a world of completely fragmented rules, who really governs the future of AI? Is it the developers, the states, or the federal government? Thanks so much for joining this explainer. See you next time.